set. And following this performance, in about 10 minutes, we'll feature the lecture of John Bushey, the escape artist. And you won't want to miss that. We've got a lot of cleaning to do, it looks like. It's my pleasure right now to introduce a gentleman that has a real great collection of escape devices, handcuffs and straitjackets and all kinds of unusual things like that. He's a Houdini collector and an expert on Houdini. And at this time, I'd like to present John Bushey.
Good afternoon. My name is John Bushey, and I'm an escape artist. I'll do a few escapes for you today. But more than that, what I'm going to do is give a little break from the magic and talk a little bit about Harry Houdini. He was born in 1874. His real name was Eric Weiss. He was born in Budapest, Hungary, and he moved to Appleton, Wisconsin as an infant. He claimed Appleton was his birthplace, but it actually was Hungary. And he grew up with an interest in magic, and at the age of 20, he got married, and then he and his wife struggled for 6 years, making nickels and dimes and literally starving. They performed in circuses, dime museums, and a lot of the small-time, vaudeville circuits. Finally, in the year 1900, he took a ship over to England, and instant fame became him. He went over to England, he went to Scotland Yard, broke out of the jail in a pair of handcuffs, and from then on, Houdini was famous. Within 1 year, he was making $2,000 a week, and that was in 1901. He was the highest paid vaudeville performer in the history of vaudeville. Not only was he a great escape artist, most people know him as that, that's how he made his fame. He was also a very good magician. He was an author. He was a lecturer. And later in his career, he spent debunking spiritualists and mediums. He would go to seances, and he found out that these mediums that are supposedly contacting, everyone's dead relatives and things, he found out that they were using tricks, magicians' tricks, and he spent a lot of time exposing them. And he was a pioneer in the field of aviation. His life is very interesting, and today I'm just going to feature the escape part of it. I brought with me one of the posters. This is upside down in the water torture cell. That was one of his most famous escapes, and I won't be demonstrating that today, but I did bring along a lot of the handcuffs. These handcuffs are from Germany, Russia, England, France, Spain, United States, and all these were used during Houdini's era. I'd like to tell you just a few of the very interesting things that Houdini did and demonstrate a few of them. At the end of the show, I'll try to duplicate one of his escapes and go one step beyond what Houdini did. He escaped from straitjackets many times, even hanging upside down from skyscrapers. I'll try to get out of a straitjacket today, but not only that, I'm going to have 50 feet of chain wrapped around the straitjacket. I don't know if I can get out, but I'm going to try. I'd like to start off, though, by telling you a little bit about the handcuffs, some of the handcuff escapes that Houdini did. I'll start with this pair. This is called, in English, Darby. I'll actually demonstrate how to get out, how Houdini escaped from many of these cuffs. This particular handcuff is from England, and it's the type that when Harry Houdini first went to England, this is the type of cuff that they put him on in Scotland Yard. It works with a special type of key. It's a key that screws into the lock. You have to turn it quite a few times here, and the lock will open. It works on a spring lock mechanism, and Houdini studied all handcuffs. He studied handcuffs from all over the world, and especially those from England when he first went there, so he was very familiar with them. There we go. And so as soon as he got to England, he dared Scotland Yard to lock him in a pair of English handcuffs. They laughed at him. They said, "Sure, we'll be glad to accommodate you." They threw the cuffs on, locked them around a pillar. Houdini was locked around a pillar, like this. If this was a big stone pillar in Scotland Yard. And they said, "We'll be back for you after lunch." And I'll actually explain this. Houdini discovered about English handcuffs, he discovered that they work on a spring lock mechanism, which means that if he hit the cuffs real hard, a little spring in there would go boing, down and up. And when it was in the down position, if he hit his wrist against the pillar at the right time and at the exact right place, he could pop the handcuffs open. If you didn't do it in the right place, you'd probably break your wrist. But I know from experience. But I'd like to demonstrate this. Now I won't hit it against the mic stand here. I'll hit it against the floor of the stage, and hopefully they'll open up. Just like that. Thanks. But that's how Houdini got his start. He was in England. They said, we'll be back after lunch. Pop, let me come with you. That's what made him such a better showman than everyone else. Other people just do a handcuff escape. Houdini did it differently. A good example of this, how many of you have heard of the famous milk can escape? A giant milk can that Houdini got out of. Magicians today duplicate this. They can still do it. You still see a few magicians performing it. But the funny thing of it is you see them, you'll get in this milk can. It's a can about yay big, this round, this big around. They get in the can, it's filled with water. They throw the top on, they lock it shut, and they put a curtain around the can. 25 seconds, maybe 40 seconds later, the magician comes out, takes his bow, and he receives his applause. Houdini did it a little differently. When Houdini did this trick, he had a giant stopwatch on the side of the stage, a giant one. And it would tick off the second. He says, I want everyone in the audience to hold their breath while I'm going to go under this water for 1 minute. And then my assistant will tap on the can and I will come up. And then I will go back down again and be locked in the can and try to escape. So Houdini would go under the water. He'd take a big breath, and he'd go down, and he'd hold his breath. And in the audience, everyone, after about 20 seconds, some people start letting their breath out, and they say, wow, I'd be drowning right now. In 45 seconds, most people had let their air out. I'd be drowning right now. At 1 minute, there were very few people that still were able to hold their breath. And then Houdini would pop up after the 1 minute, desperately gasping for breath, just all out of air. And he'd stay there for 2 seconds, go right back down. They'd throw the top on, they'd empty more water into the can, they'd lock it all up, 6 padlocks around the can. They'd be fumbling, they'd be taking their time, making it look like it was taking longer than it should. What happened? They finally put the curtain around and the audience would wait. 1 minute passed and Houdini wasn't out. And they started to wonder, I'd be probably dying right now, if not already dead. 1.5 minutes passed, Houdini wasn't out. 2 minutes, the audience started to get a little bit fidgety. They were starting to, go check, somebody check. And the guy off the stage would come onto stage with a big axe, ready to break the padlocks. 2.5 minutes. 3 minutes. And Houdini wasn't out. The audience was pretty well screaming by now, let him out, try and save his life. And then, and only then, when he could hear the audience screaming, would he stumble through the curtain and collapse onto the stage, dripping wet from the water in the can. He made it into a big show like that. He was a great showman, and he's considered the two greatest showmen in the history of show business, the other being P.T. Barnum. He would come out and just get fabulous applause. They'd pick him up and they'd carry him all the way back to his hotel on their shoulders. Back then, they actually ripped out walls to auditoriums. They ripped out the whole wall so that people could stand in the street to watch Houdini. He did a lot of great escapes like this. I'll demonstrate one of them now. Could you just come on, Chris? When Houdini was in Germany in 1903, the police in Germany said, you're using false advertising. Houdini said that he could get out of anything, and the police said, you can't get out of anything. And so they sued him, and Houdini got a little upset, and so he said, I'll prove it. I'm going to sue Germany. He sued the whole country of Germany for libel. They took him to court, and they had him open a safe. He opened the safe, no problem. He won the case. They appealed, and they went to the next higher court. Houdini won again. And in the highest court in Germany, the equivalent to the Supreme Court here in the U.S., they said, all right, we'll give you one more test. If you, Houdini, can get out of our German transport chain win the suit against Germany, the Kaiser of Germany will have to publicly apologize to you and pay the cost of all 3 trials. Houdini said, lock me in. Not only will I get out, but I'll get out in full view of the audience. I have with me a German transport chain. I'll have Chris Ford here put it on me. And I asked him to spare no mercy. And what this is a chain. This is what the German police of that period used to transport prisoners. It's a chain with a lock. Just take a look at that lock, make sure it's solid. And it has 2 little rings, as you can see, on the chain. And utilizing those 2 loops, that's how the handcuff goes on. Chris, if you could just place this on my wrist here. I'll show you exactly how this works and explain it as he does it. What happens is I loop that, pull it very tightly. Tighter, let it dig in a little bit. Okay, yeah, that's good. Okay, the other wrists are placed together. You wrap it back around there and put it through that loop. And then you come back and lock it to the chain itself. He is very good at this. Hopefully, I'll be able to get out in less time than it took him to lock me up. Okay, make sure it's all tight. Okay, they placed Houdini in this. Houdini says, I'll get out in full view. It looks just like this, the way Houdini did it. He'd slowly, and very slowly and very visibly attempt to force his wrist right out. That's not working. He says, well, I'll have to find another way. He says, why don't I just force it out this way? Houdini, being an expert at picking locks, discovered that he probably couldn't pick that lock in full view of the audience. So what he finally decided to do was just relax. Totally. After he relaxed, the cuff came right off. The Kaiser of Germany had to publicly apologize to Houdini. Thank you, Chris. One more little, very interesting story. 1904, England. The London Mirror, that's a newspaper, challenged Houdini to get out of a handcuff that it took a British mechanic 5 years to build. This is an exact duplicate of that cuff. And it's called the mirror handcuff. They challenged Houdini to get out. He accepted the challenge. The challenger, a representative from the paper, came onto the stage, said, okay, I'll lock these on your wrists. The handcuff itself weighs about 3.5 pounds. It's got a large tubular lock, and this key turns 6 complete revolutions, locking every 90 degrees, meaning if Houdini wanted to try to pick the lock, he would have had to pick it 24 times. Being that it's a 5-pin tumbler lock, he knew that he probably couldn't do that. So they locked the cuff on. Houdini then went into his cabinet. He waited. 20 minutes later, the audience, tense with excitement, thinking, this is it. Is this the one he's going to fail? He came out. The audience just cheered. They roared. But he wasn't out. And he said, can you remove the cuff? I want to take my coat off. They wouldn't do it. They would not take the cuffs off. He said, the very good reason being, I don't want you to see how the cuff unlocked. And the audience didn't like that. They thought it was kind of cruel. So Houdini forced his coat up over his back, similar to like this. He brought it all the way up and over, and he had a penknife in his pocket. He reached in, he opened the penknife, and with his teeth, he cut his coat to ribbons right in front of the whole audience. They were cheering, and they were throwing tomatoes at the guy that challenged them, and a little upset with him. So Houdini went back in his cabinet. He came out 20 minutes later, still not out. And the audience was, they were They were rooting for Houdini, but he wasn't succeeding. So he asked for a glass of water. The guy wisely this time said, sure. Gave him a glass of water, and Houdini drank the water, and he went back into his cabinet. And at 1 hour and 10 minutes, he came out with the cuffs off and still locked. To this day, no one knows how he did it. It was one of his most famous escapes. The newspaper article went over 1.5 full pages of newspaper describing every detail of how he got out. It's one of his most famous escapes. And what I'm going to do is after my show here, The Living Head, I'll have these handcuffs over here on display. As you look at the living head, you can also look at all of the handcuffs and things too. And that was one of his most famous escapes. And I'll demonstrate another handcuff escape now. I don't know if I'll get out, but I better because I don't have keys. Okay, we'll go for a triple. This is from France. It's called a Rivelier. This is a Deutsche Polizei from Germany. This is a Hamburg 8 from Germany. All these types of cuffs Houdini escaped from. And he used methods that were common knowledge to him, but other escape artists, even other escape artists, did not know how he did them. And I'll come out here and let a few people lock me in these, and I'll demonstrate to you and show you how he got out. Just one moment. I want you to take that pair of handcuffs and lock it onto my wrist. Take this pair, fold them in half, open them up now. There you go. That's how that pair opens up. Okay, when you put them on just like this. Yeah, and I'll press tight. Pull, make sure they're locked tight. And the last pair, up high. Yeah, that deserves a round of applause. That was hard. Okay, this is 3 handcuffs, and Houdini didn't just slip out of handcuffs. He had to pick or manipulate the locks, or he had to somehow utilize the locking mechanism. It's very difficult with 3 pairs, especially when one pair is very narrow. I can't spread my wrists apart, and the other pair is wide. It doesn't leave a lot of mobility. So what he would have to do is try and get the narrow pair off first. And he discovered that German handcuffs, similar to English handcuffs, have a spring lock mechanism. And he tried to utilize that, but to no avail on what's called the Hamburg 8, the first cuff there. He did find, though, that he could get out by placing the cuff between his knees and squeezing very, 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 very tightly until his wrists were almost together. You had to fold the cuffs completely in half to get them to open. Is that correct? Say yes. Yeah. And that's what I essentially have to do. Even with my wrists in the cuffs, I've got to fold them nearly completely in half. But if you do it in one quick motion, sometimes it works. The second cuff, he found he could open by just hitting. The third cuff, he found he could do the same way over his knee with the chain. Of course, the last 2 are it's harder to do with one wrist than with 2. So you have to hit it just right using his other wrist. This is where you can get a little bit scratched, a little bit hurt, but Houdini was an expert, and he could get out as many as 20 or 30 handcuffs at one time. I'll see if I can get these last 2 off. Thank you. That's one of Houdini's claims to fame is the handcuff escape, but his bigger claim to fame was the straitjacket escape. He first performed this in 1903. He saw people in an insane asylum violently struggling to get out of a straitjacket. He immediately thought, that looks like is hard to get out of. He says, I want to try that. Anytime somebody invented something that was used to restrain people, they always tested it on Houdini. And many people offered like $500 or $1,000 prizes, of which Houdini made a lot of money getting out of things that people offered prizes to. Anyway, the straitjacket he performed, the first time he did it, it took him 1 hour and 45 minutes. By the end of his career, he was doing it hanging from skyscrapers in 2 minutes and 52 seconds. That's a big improvement. And I'd like to try this today, only I'm going to, like I say, use some chain over it. And I'm going to attempt to still tie Houdini's record of 2 minutes and 52 seconds. To be honest, I don't think I'm going to be able to do it, but I do hope that I'll at least be able to get out. Could I get, I did an escape a while back in Duluth, a straitjacket escape with chain and belts and things, and I'd like to have the same people lock me up and give them another try to defeat me. Some of the same people. They're some of the members of the Duluth Mystics that challenged me with the straitjacket. Could I get them to come up? Chris Bassett or Dave? Or, okay, this will do. Dave and Chris here. Okay, this is a regulation straitjacket. This was obtained from the Chisholm Police Department, who obtained it from the Virginia Fire Department. Been around. They don't use them anymore, and they challenged me to get out, so I did, and they gave it to me. But I've never done this. I've never tried to get out of this straitjacket with anything on top, like chains. So what I'll have these guys do is buckle me in, showing all these things. These buckles have a little set of teeth in there. You just push the buckles together, then you take the other side of the strap and push it through the teeth. And then it just goes through the other side of the buckle. This locks it firmly. Now, straitjackets go on backwards. By the way, I sell these after the show. All you parents, they make great babysitters. I once again ask these guys, spare no mercy? Yeah, that's good. They're doing a real good job. Now I cross my arms like this, and they buckle it behind my back. Okay, now I'll ask them to place the chain, wrap it around tight as they can get it. As far as I know, Houdini never did a straitjacket escape with rope or chain wrapped around. Who knows? I may not either. could you come here and set my strobe on the stage, please? Yeah. And take the key out of the lock. Okay, let's give a round of applause for these guys. They did a good job. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a strobe light and ask that the house lights at this time be turned down. And in a moment, the stage lights will be turned out and the strobe turned on along with the music. Okay. Go ahead. Turn the strobe on. Do we have the lights back up? Boy, that's hot in there. So that concludes my portion of today's activities, and make sure you stay around and catch the rest of the magicians. There's a lot of great magic left to be seen. And right now, I think the living head. Okay, thank you very much. Keep going.
That really worked. I was sweating just watching him there. Could we have the house lights again, please? The next performance, or the next magician, will be Chris Ford, and he will be performing at 1 o'clock. You're welcome to look at John's handcuffs, and we have the living head set up over here. So you're welcome to take a look at that for the next 15 minutes, and enjoy your day at the depot.